What a difference a week makes in the NFL. I know I'm feeling great after the win. Suneil, in the conversations we were having, you're feeling yourself a little bit. We're feeling this team a little bit, and we're going to break it all down next. All right, welcome back to Last Second Sports, where we are giving you our take down to the last second. It's your boy Jesse. It's Tuesday, which means So Real, Suneil, and his fresh 1,000 sub channel is right here next to me. Suneil, love that hoodie as well. How you doing tonight, my man?
Bruh, there's so much to be thankful for. So had to rep the God is Dope hoodie. 1,000 subs. 49ers are in first place. Jimmy actually looked good. Let's go.
Hey, I'm with it, man. I'm absolutely with it. I could tell, we always text about topics on the show. You had an extra little pep in your step. Usually those things don't come through in text, but I was picking up on the vibe, man. You definitely are excited about that win last night, as am I. I think everybody in the chat is absolutely excited as well.
Yeah, we couldn't do just the normal grades. No. Ball. We let's talk about some stuff. We've been talking about so much negativity and all this drama around the team. Let's talk about some stuff, Jesse.
I gotta say too, hey, thank you, Ramon. He says, "What's good, fellas? Nice seeing you on Croc Show this morning." Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, you're right. And I'll say this: I think it was a week ago. I think maybe it was after the Denver loss. We did a good job, I think, starting out the show and trying to give positives. But it's tough, man. When you don't win, you can only be so positive. And listen, I have no problem saying how it is, right? But sometimes even saying it how it is can be so negative or feel so negative that it's like, dude, I want to talk about something positive. And getting that win last night was so sweet. I tweeted out early. I almost jinxed the 49ers, but I tweeted out, there's nothing better than beating the Rams. There's something about it. You absolutely love it, especially after they took a Super Bowl away from this team last year. I love that game. Every second of it. It was complete dominance by the 49ers. So let's talk about it.
No, let's talk about one thing before we move into it.
Let's do
The streak continues, Jesse. And if you don't remember what the streak is, it is that anytime Jesse picks against the 49ers, it works, but it has to be a genuine. We tried to, I don't know, maybe it doesn't have to be genuine because we don't know what the real picking against was, but it was definitely, I'm glad the streak was alive. I was going to text you after the second touchdown in the first half. I was going to be like, will it jinx the jinx if we talk about the jinx?
I know you were trying to talk me out of it, but it's not just that. It's just the Rams. Every time, whatever I pick is the opposite. And the one time in the last 4 games that I've picked the 49ers to beat the Rams, they lost. So if I pick against them, against the Rams, the 49ers are winning that game. So thank me. I told you last week, I said, thank me later when this thing comes out and the 49ers win, you can thank me. So I'm glad that you were here to give me my flowers for that one. I deserve credit. I really do.
You deserve it. The win was all you, actually.
100% it was. No doubt about it. All right. Let's talk about it, though. All right. So a lot of good things happened last night. Hell, I just came off a Jack show and gave Jimmy a game ball, believe it or not. You can go see it. It's recorded. I promise you it happened. But Jimmy Garoppolo, it's funny because there's so much contention around the quarterback position when it comes to the 49ers. You're a Trey guy, you're a Jimmy guy, it's whatever. But right now, we've seen the worst of Jimmy last week, and then we saw Jimmy at arguably his best last night, right? And we've seen it all in a 7-day or 8-day time span. So was there anything that we learned about Jimmy last night, in your opinion?
So I think that I don't think we learned anything new. Let's just put it that way. I think that the reality was Kyle Shanahan. This is the game that Kyle Shanahan needs to call for Jimmy on a consistent basis. That's what I think we learned is the sweet spot that Jimmy needs to be successful for this team, and it's the quick passes. It's the not too many difficult quote unquote throws that could turn into interceptions. Even though Jimmy did try that a few times, throw an interception. I think that he should have had a second touchdown. I put that on Kittle for not knowing where he was in the end zone, and he should have been able to get that second foot down. That would have been a second touchdown for Jimmy, which I thought was a decent throw from him. But this is Kyle Shanahan played into Jimmy's strengths. He's extremely quick at getting the ball out of his hands. He's pretty accurate at the short throws, and they maximized when they needed to maximize as far as being able to put points on the board with this offense. So I think that this is the sweet spot. It looks great because it came from a win, but the reality was this is just a very good, just a decent game. He didn't do anything spectacular. He just played good, and a good quarterback with this defense can go very, very far. And so that's what I learned is just this is the sweet spot that we need to have Jimmy play in.
Yeah, and I disagree with this comment here. It may not have been his best game, right? I mean, some of those games against the Cardinals were really good. I think the Saints game is a little bit overblown, personally. There was a lot that happened around that for them to go win that game. The Kittle play was amazing. Emmanuel Sanders threw a touchdown, if I remember correctly. But those games against the Cardinals were probably his best games, like from a statistical standpoint. But when I say his best or near his best, him just getting the ball out quickly, avoiding a couple sacks, which I think is overlooked because he did do a good job of that yesterday. He avoided a couple. One was instant from Donald. That's the only. I didn't even know Donald was in that game other than that play.
Right.
But he got in, got out, got rid of that ball. So avoided sacks, got the ball out quick, didn't turn the ball over. That to me is Jimmy at his best. Certainly there is a game or two that you can look at over the 5 years with San Francisco where it's like, oh man, Jimmy was really dialed in. But Jimmy's a net zero quarterback. I stand by that. He's not going to be the reason you win, and he's not going to be the reason you lose most of the time. Now, I can point to a couple games that the 49ers lost because of Jimmy last week. I can point to a couple games, to be fair, though, that the 49ers won because of Jimmy. But for the most part, if he's that net zero guy, but more importantly, that net zero guy without throwing interceptions and turning the ball over, man, that's all that we need. That's all the Niners need with this defense. So to me, I actually think that was Jimmy near his best. I do. And I don't need any more from Jimmy. I don't expect any more from Jimmy.
Right.
I know who he is. My expectations are set on who he is. They stretched the defense out horizontally. Did a fantastic job of it. That was one of my keys to the game last week. That's what I wanted to see them do because Jimmy, I don't think he's a guy who's ever going to stretch the field vertically. Not saying he can't do it a time or two, but for the most part, he's not going to be that guy. But what he can do is be very accurate. He's got that quick release. And if you dial up those plays around the line of scrimmage outside the numbers, he's going to deliver it on time, allow those guys to go get the extra yards. And that's something that they can do on a regular basis. And they can use it as an extension to their run game if they aren't running the ball very well. So to me, that is Jimmy at his near best last night. And I am totally fine if that's who he is, game in and game out. If that's who he is, and we can get that from Jimmy on a regular basis, sky's the limit for this team. I really believe that.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned two critical things that Jimmy can actually become a net positive through. And one of those is being able to avoid the sacks when he can, right? And the other one was, he held onto the ball. There was no turnovers, right? So those are two things where I think where you say it's near his best. If he's doing those two things, that is a net positive. I think overall, especially with the way this team wins. And one thing that Jimmy did well this game is if the running game is going to be inconsistent, right? They average 4.1 yards per carry. The fact that Jimmy was still able to manufacture yards, or Kyle Shanahan, whoever you want to put the credit for, right? Kyle Shanahan with his play calling or whatever, spreading it horizontally, like you said, getting the wide receivers, those wide receiver screens where they could get 4 to 6 yards on a first or second down. That's still running play yards, getting into third and manageable type situations. They went from 1 in 10 last game in third down to 5 out of 12. So definitely a big difference. And I just really loved the execution from this game was so much better than the week previous.
Absolutely. And Steve-O says Jimmy had a few dimes. Yes, those 2 throws to Kittle were very, very good. But he also had some throws that were easy throws that he passed up that would have gone for big, big yardage. That's just who Jimmy is. Like, we have to be, I think Diego said it, Jimmy's MVP. If your expectation is that, then you're going to be let down. And then you're also going to, when he doesn't play at the level that you're expecting, you're going to have a lot of people hunting you down and be like, where's that MVP? Where are you at? It's just, don't expect that. And Avatar, listen, if that's all he has, then play to his strengths. Like, the strengths are get the ball out quick, get it on the perimeter, let those guys go out and do their thing, which all these guys can get major yak. We've seen it year after year after year. Just play to that. That's fine. Like, if that's what you have, then build a game plan around it. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with it. So to me, just don't turn the ball over. So no, the answer, long story short, the answer is no. We didn't learn anything new about Jimmy. I know you go look at the throws he made, you go look at where they were at on the field. It was nothing different than what we've seen from Jimmy. He has had games in the past where he hasn't turned the ball over. I just want to see that consistently. If we can go 3-4 weeks in a row without a turnover, that would be seeing something that I haven't seen from Jimmy. And then I would start to think, okay, maybe we got something here, right? We've gone 3-4 games in a row without a turnover, without that boneheaded throw directly to a DB. Okay, maybe we're off and cooking here. So this is the building blocks. This is where it starts. And, listen, yes, he dropped one, but that goes both ways. Debo made a hell of a catch and then dropped it off for 50 plus. So anyways, enough about Jimmy Garoppolo. I'm excited for him, excited for this team, and excited to see what this team can do if, in fact, Jimmy continues to play this way. Okay, so then that brings up the next question. Should this team continue to throw more than run? And I think this is interesting because there was a stat that was thrown out by my guy Kevin on Sunday, maybe it was Monday, where he broke down the games where Jimmy had actually thrown more than they had ran the ball. And I think his record in those games was like 8-13 when they threw more than they ran. So last night would have been a good, right? The 9th win. But when they ran more than they threw, that's where his winning record really came into play. It was like 25-1 or something crazy like that. So this is an interesting question. And I think the statistics say, no, they shouldn't continue to throw more. But I might go in a different direction on this. What are your thoughts with this one?
My answer is gonna be the most terrible answer that I always hear, but I'm gonna use it as often as possible. The answer is yes and no. And what I mean by that is
great. Thanks for that.
Yes and no. I hate when people say that, so I try to use it as much as possible. But yes and no. And why I say that, Jesse, is because it's gonna be contingent on the type of throws that we're talking about. If this is like Jimmy has to throw down the field more than the running attempts, then my answer is not only just no, it's hell to the no, right? We don't want the game on Jimmy's arm in that way. But like you mentioned, if these throws are stretched horizontally and they're safe throws, and they're safe because Jimmy does get the ball out of his hands quickly, their passes to sure-handed receivers and like a Debo, Ayuk, where they can, utilize their yards after the catch prowess. To me, yeah, especially because, Jeff Wilson Jr. is really good at breaking one a game. It seems like, right? We've seen him have, at least one really nice run per game. It seems like, but overall, it's still not like the consistent type of rushing attack that we've seen or are being accustomed to with an Elijah Mitchell, with the Raheem Mostert in past years. So if we can't manufacture yards through the rush, I'm okay with manufacturing them through the wide receiver screens. And to me, that's a safe pass. It's pretty much like a run, but it just goes under the pass statistics. So in that case, I'd say, yeah, let's do it. As long as you're getting the ball into your playmaker's hands as often as possible, to me, that's a winning recipe.
Yeah, for sure. And Diego says we all expect every quarterback to be Alex Smith and not commit turnovers. And I disagree. I think we don't expect every quarterback to be that. Like if we have a true gunslinger at quarterback, a guy who can make all the throws and is gonna risk it all for the biscuit and is gonna throw some turnovers here or there, but is also gonna be the reason that you go and win games because he's throwing for 400 yards and just dropping dimes 30, 40 yards down the field on a pretty regular basis. Sure, like Herbert or what have you. Herbert, Allen, some of those guys that can, Mahomes, some of those guys that can do that. But if you're labeled as a game manager and that's your skill set, then I do expect you to not commit many turnovers. I don't mind you having 22 touchdown passes in a season if it's accompanied by 7 interceptions. But when you have 22 touchdown passes in a season and you have 18 total turnovers,
Right.
Where's the upside, right? Like, you got to give me one or the other. You either got to really protect the ball if you're not going to give me the 30, 40 touchdown passes in a season, or you can give me the 40 touchdown passes and I'll take the 20 turnovers, but you can't be neither. So Jimmy falls in that game manager skill set. So I would expect and hope for less turnovers. So yeah, for Jimmy, that is my expectation. That's not my expectation for Matthew Stafford, right? Or whatever. They're just different players. So, but I agree with you. To me, I don't mind throwing the ball 30 times a game if 18 are near the line of scrimmage out in the perimeter, because that is an extension of the run. I look at that as a run play, essentially, right? I know it counts as a pass, but when you literally are taking the snap and you're turning and firing immediately down the line of scrimmage, if it's a half a yard back, that's a run play. I look at that as an extension of the run. And right now, they don't have the running back that you can just throw those tosses to that's going to get outside the tackles and make teams pay. They can make you pay between the tackles. But the way that you can kind of circumvent that and overcome that is to get things outside the numbers is by throwing it down the line of scrimmage and doing it very quickly. And that is something that Jimmy can do. It's something that Jimmy does well. And it's an extension to me of the run game. So 100%, I have the number of runs becomes less important if, to your point, those are the types of throws that we're getting. Right. You
and
can't
it also,
have,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying, you can't have 30 throws in a game and half of them are 10 yards down the field. No, that's not going to win a lot of games with this quarterback, right? So
for sure. And with the offensive line that, many say is not necessarily, as good as people want it to be, you're protecting that. I think it's great in the sense that you're taking the ball out of the position of the weakest points of your offense, which is the offensive line, maybe the quarterback, and you're putting it in the hands very quickly of the strengths of your offense, which is guys like Debo, Ayuk, Kittle, Juszczyk, whatever the case may be, right? So for me, absolutely, I wouldn't be mad if that's the game plan moving forward.
Yeah, for sure. Striptease Trey, that's actually a pretty funny name. As much as I hate to admit it, this team is just better suited for Jimmy. I truly believe the Niners are 1-3 with Trey right now. Jimmy and Debo complement each other. This team has a legit shot if healthy. I don't know. I mean, that's. Listen, I can't tell you you're wrong because none of us know. I mean, none of us know. Some people think that Jimmy would have won the Bears game. I don't think so, but some people believe that. I think Trey would have won the Broncos game, but some people don't believe that. So there's no way of knowing. I respect your opinion. I think some of the skill sets of the players, I will agree with you there, might be better suited for this type of game. But I also think Brandon Ayuk really is kind of being held back by this style of game. I do. I think that Ayuk certainly is a guy that can get open downfield. He proves it over and over. If you're a member of the channel, you can actually go back. I believe that it's still on there, the NFC Championship game, where I broke down the film and how open Ayuk was on a regular basis. If they had just picked on that second corner and thrown it to Ayuk 15 times that game, Ayuk has 150 plus yards receiving, and they win that game going away. I genuinely believe that. But Jimmy can't tap into that skill set. And so I think it goes both ways. But I appreciate the super chat, and I appreciate the opinion.
One thing on this one is, sorry,
yeah.
before you jump to the other one.
Yeah, you're good.
You know, Jimmy has a quicker release than Trey, has shown to be a little more accurate in the short passing as of now. But there's no comparison in how much Trey affects the running game. The rushing attack was so much better with Trey, even in the game in a quarter that we got to see him in. In that first 2 drives that he had before he got injured, they were already at 100 yards rushing. So the rushing attack would be insane with Trey healthy, but Jimmy makes up for it in the passes and things like that. So it's a trade-off, whatever you want to see as far as, you know, how you want the offense to look.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair point, right? Like we just talked about where Jimmy is effective in throwing those quick passes down the sideline. That's not Trey's strength. Like that is something that he needs to work on. And so they can use that as an extension of the run game to where you probably couldn't do that with Trey, but you didn't necessarily need to do that because you were just running the ball good, right? Because Trey does open those things up. And then you got the downfield passing, but then you've got the intermediate and in the middle. But I get it. I understand. I really could see either side. I respect the opinion. Gray Fox says, I expect this team to destroy Carolina and Atlanta. And let me tell you something. If you don't think this team has the Chiefs game circled on the calendars, think again. They're coming for payback and will embarrass the Chiefs. Love the pod, Jay and Suneil. Hey, thank you, Gray Fox, man. That's awesome. I really appreciate you. That is a big one. I appreciate you. In fact, I haven't been doing it, but I think you deserve it.
He deserves it.
You deserve it. I'm showing you love, man. I appreciate you, Gray Fox. I do agree with you to a certain extent here. I certainly think this game is circled for sure. And I'm gonna point to that and back that up by saying I think there's a reason that Trent Williams did not go on IR. And Kyle Shanahan keeps saying 4 to 6 weeks, maybe sooner, 4 to 6 weeks. Well, that 4-week mark for Trent Williams is the Chiefs game. I'd be shocked if he doesn't suit up for that one. I really would. So I agree with you on that one. Thank you so much, Gray Fox. Really appreciate it. Okay. Suneil, I felt like you put this topic on here because you want to take your victory laps. The offensive line was 0 sacks. Are they Super Bowl ready? And I panicked in the offseason. Talk to me about this offensive line. I'll say this. I'll set you up this way. There's a lot of shuffling going on. It was very interesting to see what they did with Burford and Brunskill. It is going to be interesting to see what they do for the next, I think, 2 weeks without Trent Williams, possibly without McKivitz. But you're right, 0 sacks. I think it might be a little bit of the game plan. We just talked about the game plan and getting the ball out quick and those types of things. But McGlinchey looked really good. I'll give him that. So talk to me about this offensive line, man.
So not only the 0 sacks, only I think 5 pressures, something like that. And obviously there was the big error by Burford, with just completely not blocking the best defensive player in the league for the past however many years in Aaron Donald. Definitely a big blunder. But other than that, like you mentioned, didn't really hear too much about Aaron Donald after that, right? He had a few tackles for losses and whatnot. But overall, this is what I thought the offensive line would be as far as production. People thought that it would be this big gaping weakness, big gaping hole. And it's really not that. And it's not because these guys are necessarily that much better or good or whatever. I think previous offensive lines were just hyped. This offensive line has always been good because of the game plan that Kyle Shanahan put together. And what I mean by that is there's not very many plays that you could look at in the 49ers past 5 or 6 years with Kyle Shanahan where the quarterback is just sitting back there with 5, 6, 7 seconds of time. This has always been a quick timing offense. 1, 2, 3, throw it out, get the ball out under 2.5 seconds. So the offensive line keeps the quarterback clean because of what you just mentioned, the game plan. But because it's rookies now instead of all pros and all this type of stuff, now all of a sudden it's the game plan when before it was the talent around there. And that's the only thing that I was trying to bring up is, look, this offensive line doesn't need to have a whole bunch of all pros on it because it was never necessarily that they were that much better than everybody else other than a guy like Trent Williams, right? Because at the end of the day, let's be honest, it's not like Jimmy G was holding the ball for 5, 6 seconds when Laken Tomlinson was there. He was still getting the ball out under 2.5 seconds. So for me, it was always going to be about the game, the scheme around it. So yeah, I think to the question, Super Bowl ready, eventually there's going to be some plays where these guys got to step up and make some plays. They can't be making the type of mistakes like leaving Aaron Donald all the way unblocked and whatnot. But I think that when it is time to be in the Super Bowl, you always mention it. At that point, these guys aren't rookies anymore. So at that point, they've gone through a whole 17-game season, a deep playoff run. So their understanding of the game at that point, I think that there's a very good possibility that this offensive line won't be a reason why this team can't compete for a Super Bowl. And I'll just put it like that, Jesse.
Well, I'll say this too. Let me answer this question first. LA 49er, thank you for the comment. He says, hey, Jesse, do you think we'll see Alfredo Gutierrez at some point with playing time? I don't, man. He's so raw. I mean, maybe eventually, right? But not this season. If it gets that far down, then the 49ers are not in a good spot, right? He's just not ready. I mean, you're talking about a kid that just hasn't played a lot of football. I think it's a great story. I love that he's still around in some capacity. And maybe he can actually turn into a rostered player on a regular basis in this league eventually. But no, not this year. I don't see it, unfortunately. But I'll say this about the offensive line. Listen, I know that it doesn't seem the best right now, but when Trent Williams comes back, assuming that they can keep health from, Banks, Brendel, Burford, McGlinchey, and then you've got Brunskill coming off the bench, or you want to throw in Brunskill and you got one of those guys coming off the bench, however you want to see that offensive line, with the experience that they are getting without Trent Williams on the field for these couple weeks, I think is going to just be the best thing in the world for this offensive line. I really do. They saw Aaron Donald just yesterday. It doesn't get any better than that in this league. It doesn't. Not from the interior. Now they get to go up against Brian Burns, who's a hell of a player for the Panthers. There's some good players that they're getting ready to see. Now they should win these games, right? But then if you add in a Trent Williams, and then they've got to see Chris Jones with the Chiefs and who's the other guy? Frank Clark. You got to go see those guys. It's easy. Like it's not going to get harder than what you just went through. Without Trent Williams, McKivitz goes down. Jalen Moore has to play left tackle, which is like in case of emergency, pull the fire alarm. That's what that situation was. And it was against Aaron frickin' Donald, right? So it doesn't get scarier than that. And they were able to see through that situation. So if this offensive line can stay healthy, they're getting this game experience. They're getting these just thrown feet to the fire situations and coming through it better. This offensive line is developing very, very quickly. And I'm liking what I'm seeing so far. So very, very happy. And I agree. I think this offensive line with Trent Williams and everybody healthy certainly could be Super Bowl ready when it comes to be that time. Freddie Gonzalez says, Jesse, do you think Trent? Yes, 100%. I really think that's the game that they're targeting. he said, he was kind of cryptic about it, but he's like, I forget what the wording was, but it was basically like, expect me back very soon. They haven't put him on IR for a reason. They keep talking about 4 to 6 weeks, possibly earlier is what the wording that Shanahan has used. 4 weeks is the Chiefs. I think that is 100% the game that they plan on bringing him back, barring any setbacks, which I doubt he's going to have. He's in a boot. They're protecting it the best way they can. I expect Trent Williams back against the Chiefs 100%. Yeah, I do. Which is fantastic. I mean, that game is going to be fun.
Just a little pushback on the whole, not to poke too many holes in your narrative, but I think the IR thing is more that they have so many people in IR. There is a limit to how many people you could put on, and there's just no depth behind Trent to bring somebody off the practice squad that's going to take a roster spot. So I think that's more the reason why he's not on IR. There's so many people. Like, I think there's only you can only do like 8,
back,
right?
I think. Yeah,
right.
You can. I think the rule is you can only bring 8 people back, but I mean, you're gonna bring back Verrett, you're gonna bring back Ward, that's 2.
You're gonna bring back
Mitchell, that's 3.
You're gonna bring
I
back,
guess that could be
Jordan. My guy, Jordan. I can't believe I'm forgetting his last name. That the defensive Jordan Willis. You're bringing him back. You just put Aziz on there. I think so.
I mean, does he deserve a roster spot at this point? I don't know.
I mean, they put him on IR for a reason. I think they like him in special teams and especially depth on the defensive line, especially interior. If Kinlaw's going to be in and out, that's another guy that could play inside. And then
I'll say this: if they thought Trent Williams was going to be out 6 to 8 weeks, which is like the longer end of a high ankle sprain, I think no doubt they put him on IR. Whether
Sure.
it's to bring in another offensive lineman or just anybody to roster, I feel like they make that move. I think that they really believe that this is on the shorter side, and so they can manage for 4 weeks. If it's 6 or 8 weeks, or they think that's the pot. And Shanahan actually talked about this with Greg Papa. He did talk about the IR thing. So that's a great point by you. He said, hey, we can only bring 8 people back. He goes, but if we feel like this thing is going to linger, we'll absolutely address that situation and put them on IR. I think they're expecting the 4-week mark.
Right. That's good. I mean, if they could be hopeful enough to not need to put them on IR, that's a good sign.
Yeah, for sure. All right. 49ers, like I said, it's so funny, man. What a difference a week makes. I mean, last week we're talking about, is this the end of the season? And now it's, have they figured it out, or is it just the Rams? What is your thoughts on this? I mean, have they really turned a corner here, or is it just they have the Rams number? Because I'll say this. There's a lot of things you can count on in the regular season. Russell Wilson beating the 49ers, which is what happened last week, and the 49ers beating the Rams, right? So we saw both things play out in back-to-back weeks. Maybe we were too low after last week when we should have known they were going to lose to Russell Wilson, and maybe we're too high after this week when we should have known they would have beat the Rams. What are your thoughts overall? Have they figured it out, or is it just the Rams?
So I've had this narrative throughout the whole offseason from last year to this year, right? And I think I mentioned, I was like you, I picked the Rams to beat the Niners this week, but I did say if the 49ers scored 2 touchdowns in the first half, that they would win the game, right? And they ended up scoring 2 touchdowns in the first half. They won the game. And the reason for that is this is a different defense when they're playing with the lead, right? Close games and things like that, that's where it becomes murky because, you know, it just becomes tough at that point. But if they can make a team one-dimensional by putting them behind the 8 ball and them needing to score touchdowns instead of just field goals to stay in the game, then that plays into the strength of this defense, which is the defensive line and the secondary. But somebody earlier had mentioned it. They didn't score that much in the second half. No touchdowns, right? Other than the defensive touchdown. What's one thing that you mentioned, Jesse? We haven't seen this offense be able to put together 4 quarters of consistent offense. So for me, I still can't confidently say that the 49ers have figured it out until they're able to consistently be able to score when they should be scoring, right? When there is good field position, when they are moving the ball down the field, they need to be able to finish drives. And we still haven't seen them be able to put 4 quarters together of that. So I'm still going to be cautiously optimistic, but say that they haven't figured it out. This was more getting up for a divisional game. They're playing at home against a team that they're very familiar with. Rams did have some injuries, especially along the offensive line, that the 49ers were obviously able to take advantage of with their 7 sacks. So I'm not ready to quite say they figured it out. I'm going to lean more towards this was the Rams, but we do have another 3 weeks to really see if I'm right or if I'm wrong.
No, I think that's a good point. I'm going to take a page out of your book. I'm going to say yes and no. And what I mean by that is, no, I don't know if they've figured it out for the season, right? As far as can they go and beat some of these tougher teams, the Chiefs, the Chargers, the Dolphins, some of these AFC teams that have some firepower, right? But yes, they have figured out how to win this division. And I think I just look at this division, I look at the way the 49ers are built, and that's one of the things that a lot of people that put together teams say is you have to figure out how to beat your division first. Win your division. Mm-hmm. Is your team built to win the division? And then once you get to the playoffs, we'll figure it out. This team is built to win this division. They just are. I mean, the defense, the other teams in this division outside of Seattle, but really, I mean, they're not scaring anybody. The other 2 teams are built around the pass. The 49ers have pass rushers and an elite secondary. So you're not going to really be able to pass against them.
Right.
And they also are built to stop the pass. Well, the 49ers don't pass a lot. So that doesn't really work either. So the 49ers are built to win this division. I would be shocked if they did any worse than 5-1 in this division. I really think they're that far ahead right now of the rest of the teams in this division. So I expect 5-1. Wouldn't be shocked if they go 6-0. So the answer is yes, they figured it out as far as winning this division, which is step 1. Have they figured out how to beat the real explosive offenses in this league? Time will tell. We'll see. And this defense is really good. Don't get me wrong. I don't have any questions about this defense, but you cannot expect this defense to stop every high-flying offense they come across. And when that happens, will the 49ers offense be able to put enough points on the board to go win those possible shootouts that are ahead of them? Time will tell.
That was
you,
a very
like
big
that?
Cop.
You like how I stole that?
That was like a terrible cop-out answer. Time will tell. Like what are we doing on this show? What are we doing on Last Second Sports? Look, we're not talking about stuff down to the last second because time will tell. So we're gonna push this to future seconds because who cares about last seconds anymore? Put yourself out on a limb, guy. Jesse. What are we doing here?
Listen. I learned from the best. You used a yes and no answer earlier, and
I gave an answer after. I said yes and no as a joke, and I gave an answer.
We'll re-roll the tape after this. I don't believe it. I'm not buying it. My gosh.
Okay. Future. Hey, we're doing it down to the future seconds here on Future Second Sports.
I like it. There's a ring to that. Next week when you show up, it's gonna say Future Second Sports across the top just for you.
I love it.
Okay. I'm going to ask this kind of a twofold way. First of all, is Kyle Shanahan a bad play caller? And does it really matter? Like from an offensive standpoint, does he have to be this incredible play caller for him to ultimately be a good head coach? I think the way you phrase the question is he still a bad play caller? I think a lot of that is coming from some of the outside talks about how he just is a terrible play caller and all those other things.
Petty.
It was super petty. But I will say this, you know me, I have no problem killing Kyle Shanahan. This last week, I definitely went after the he's a genius tag because I think it is way too early for all that. But I also have been very fair in saying, hey, let's judge this guy like a head coach, not just an offensive play caller. And when you do that and you take a step back, there's a lot of things that are really good with Kyle. So that being said, maybe we should ask it like this, though. Did Kyle show you something you didn't know, right? We asked that about Jimmy. Kyle called a good game, a game for the most part. Now, the second half was iffy. A lot of people didn't like the not going forward on fourth down at the 1 yard line. But is Kyle a bad play caller? And did you learn anything new about Kyle this week?
Should we keep the trend? Let's go. Yes. No, I'm just kidding.
Yes.
I tweeted mid-game about a certain series where Jimmy threw a ball high, or there was a play call where it was going to be a wide receiver screen to Ray McLeod, and Jalen Ramsey knocked the ball down, which is a great play by him. But that had potential to be a big gainer because the blocks were set up, and obviously we know Ray is really good with the ball in his hands. And then there was another play where Juwan Jennings was open to get a first down, and Jimmy kind of sailed it over his head, right? So it ended up being either a 3 and out, or obviously they had to punt after that. But it was 2 plays where Kyle Shanahan had schemed the receiver wide open to get some major yards, where the execution wasn't there. And if this didn't lead to a big win, like it ended up happening, you would have heard the same narratives that Kyle Shanahan doesn't know how to play call, he can't move the ball, all this kind of stuff. And I tweeted that in the moment because I know sometimes guys like you, Jesse, are out there nitpicking every single play and ignoring the plays that he schemed up perfectly that were just badly executed. So I was like, is Kyle Shanahan a bad play caller? If the 49ers don't win this game, I just want you guys to remember these 2 plays where he had these receivers wide open and they weren't executing right. So I don't think he was ever a bad play caller. I think it's just, is Jimmy going to execute or is Jimmy not going to execute? And not just Jimmy, is Trey going to execute or is Trey not going to execute? Because there was some plays that when Trey was playing that he wasn't executing on where Kyle Shanahan had schemed him wide open. I think the narrative around Kyle Shanahan and his head coaching prowess and his offensive genius prowess and his offensive play calling prowess is very much overblown. You watch the All 22, and I watch you watch the All 22, and there's a lot of open receivers when you're breaking down those plays, and that isn't for everybody's offense, Jesse. I know you're not breaking down all 22 for all 32 teams in the league, but I guarantee you the 49ers are probably up there with the amount of wide open receivers they have compared to the rest of the league. And that's why I think the main criticism for Kyle Shanahan is he hasn't figured out his quarterback situation in 6 years of being on the team. And I think that's absolutely a fair criticism because we shouldn't still be having quarterback issues in year 6 of your tenure, right? Especially when you have the number 1 ranked defense and the defense has gone on this trajectory. Offense should be going the same way. So, I think that Kyle Shanahan still has a bag, one of the deepest bags in the league, but we're always going to have this conversation until he fixes the quarterback situation.
Yeah, for sure. And one thing that I will say is obviously I've been really, really high on Kyle and I've been really, really low on Kyle. But the one thing that I have remained consistent on, regardless of what my thought is in the moment about Kyle, is he's the head coach of this team. And I've always framed it that way. I hate it when people say, well, I mean, he's what more do you want from him? He's dialing it up. The quarterback's not making the throws. It's like, well, he picks the quarterback. Like it's also his fault. But then the flip side of that is when people want to kill him for not making the best play calls or whatever, they want to take the opposite stance. I'm like, well, I mean, you can't say this defense is great and then only blame him for the offense because he's the head coach. He picked those groceries too, right? So this goes both ways. I mean, at the end of the day, we just have to stop looking at Kyle Shanahan as the offensive coordinator. Yes, he calls the plays. I get that. But that's not all he is. He's the head coach of this team. So everything you like about this team, whether it's defense, special teams, a certain coach, Maybe you like John Lynch, whatever. All of that is Kyle Shanahan. And everything you don't like about this team, undisciplined in week one, questionable clock management, having Jimmy G still be your, whatever it is, picking Trey Lance, whatever, I don't know, whatever your bugaboo is with this team that's also Kyle Shanahan. So everything about this team that you love or hate or are indifferent about falls under the Kyle Shanahan umbrella. And that's just the facts of the way this thing is. It just is. So we can't just judge him as he's only the offensive coordinator, because that's not the case. So, and this goes both ways. So that's my only stance with Kyle Shanahan is, and you're right. I mean, I don't watch every team game in and game out, but what I can say is I watch every game that the 49ers play. Now, granted, they're going up against a really good defense, but last year, I mean, the defense had its hiccups, especially the first half of the season. I saw all those too. No, you're right. I mean, most teams aren't dialing up as many open receivers as Kyle Shanahan does. There's no doubt about that. He does a great job at getting guys open. And yes, they're not always hit, whether it's Trey, Jimmy, whatever. But again, he's shopping for the groceries. So that's my message. That's my overarching message. Whatever your thoughts are about this team, good or bad, put it on Kyle Shanahan's plate. That's the only thing I ask. All right. Last question here. And this is what the show was built around. Did the 49ers put the league on notice last night? And before we get into that, let's get into the super chat. Striptease Trey. Every time. If we can have one season with really good health for once, I love our chances. I always thought if our secondary was better, we would win for sure in 19 and 21, praying that we can just stay healthy. Yes, 100%. But the flip side of that is they have depth in areas that they haven't always had depth, right? You look at the secondary. Not only is this the most talented secondary they've had in this regime, probably the most talented secondary since 1994, and a deep secondary. They have legitimately 3 safeties that could start for this team. And whatever the combination is that you throw out there, I feel good about it. I feel like they can win with that and they can go make plays. They have 3 outside corners that they can start. And whatever the combination is, out of those 3, once Verrett is back, I feel really good about that. They can go out and make plays and they can win. And they have not 3. They have 2 nickel corners that can start in Womack and Lenore. And whoever it is that actually gets the start, I feel really good about. That is not something that any other team in this league can say. The 49ers have that. They went from being one of the thinnest secondaries, arguably in the league, in my opinion, to the deepest secondary in one offseason through drafting and bringing in free agents. So kudos to them for not only addressing the secondary, which a lot of people hated. They felt like they never did, but addressing it in a big way. May not be exactly how some of us expected. I know that I personally would have liked Cross on this team instead of TDP, but regardless of how it got done, the 49ers did a great job of turning the secondary completely over in one season and making it extremely deep and extremely talented. So, yes, injuries are probably going to happen, but they can overcome those, at least in the secondary, better than they ever have. So, I like the comment, Striptease. Yeah.
And what's wild, Jesse, is with that secondary, Lenore has been playing really good. Womack, played well in the beginning. In the first few games, he got a chance. But those guys can be moved to the bench when Verrett comes and when Ward comes back. And you can still start Gibson, Hufanga, and move Jimmy Ward into the nickel. Or you can move Mosley or Verrett into the nickel and have a Mooney, Mosley, Verrett second. It's nasty, the type of combinations that this team is going to have in the second half of the season. If Verrett comes back the way that we hope he comes back, if Jimmy Ward comes back, though, it's insane. Like the combinations that could be played is D'Amico Ryans is definitely going to have a lot to play with for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I love this comment. I would love not in my house. You're not. I would love it. All right, let's get back to the question at hand. Did the 49ers last night, in your opinion, put the league on notice?
I think I'm going to go with no. Okay. And the reason why is
you're wrong, by the way. But go ahead. I like
hey, you can't be wrong on Future Second Sports, bro, because we don't get the answers till the future.
We're always cashing in on futures. I love it here.
So the reason why I say is because still, like I said, I don't think any team doesn't understand the potential of this team. I think that teams just don't teams still aren't super scared of the 49ers because they know that the offense still isn't consistent. I think everybody knows that if Jimmy plays the way he played last night, this is probably the best team in the league. Let's be honest. Maybe the Eagles, I would say, are probably the best team right now. By the way, I call that as well, as far as the Eagles being one of the best teams in the NFC. But until we string together enough games of this offense showing that they could put up 21 to 28 points consistently per game, I don't think that the 49ers have put the league on notice. This defense, though, is nasty, right? No defense through the first 4 games, Jesse, has allowed less points than the 49ers have allowed. 7 sacks in one game is insane, right? Nick Bosa has the most sacks in the league. Talanoa Hufanga already has 2 or 3 interceptions, 2 at least. They're averaging an interception per game. They just scored for the first time as a defense. So this defense is insane, and I don't think anybody is looking at this defense and excited to play them. But I still think you look at the Denver game, you look at the Chicago game, and even anemic offenses see that there's a chance for them to be able to win because this offense isn't consistent enough. So I think that the next 3 weeks are going to be important. If they go 3-0, or even if they go 2-1, but the Kansas City game is really close and it just comes to the better quarterback ended up winning or whatever, maybe then. But I don't think in week 4 anybody's necessarily – I don't think the 49ers have done enough, in my estimation, where the league is like, we can't beat this team.
I think that's fair. I think this is a great comment, by the way. And Josh Norman's still a free agent, just in case. Please niffer again. That was atrocious. Where's the? Oh, hey, here's a good one. This is probably more of a question for Grant.
Mav is retired from 49er talk. He's gotten really busy with his baseball gig during the season, so he can't do 49er talk till after the season over there with the River Cats or whatever they're called in the Bay.
Dude with glasses has a name. His name's Suneil. Go check him out. So Real Sports Talk. All right, you can check him out over on his channel. But yes, he does know his stuff. I agree, Ray. All right, so I'm going to disagree with you on this, though. I do think the 49ers put the league.
He does know his stuff, but he's wrong right here.
I do think the 49ers put the league on notice. And even if it's just the defensive side of the football, this defense is so special right now, Suneil. I mean, they gave up 19 points in week 1. Right. The defense since then in 3 games has given up 18 points. Right. Just the defense, right? That's insane, man. They're holding teams to an average of 9.25 points per game, right? Then you've got Kyle Shanahan, who the league respects as a play caller, whether he's a genius or not. The league does respect him. And there's just so much talent on this team. I mean, at some point, just having the better talent wins games more often than not. And I know that early on it may not have played out that way, but there is still not a team that has more top-tier talent in the league than the San Francisco 49ers. And then you start to add in that secondary talent, and it's through the roof. There's so much talent on this team. So I do believe that they put the league on notice last night. much like I think the Chiefs put the league on notice the night before. Now, I may be a prisoner of the moment, especially because both those games were primetime, but that Chiefs offense, man, I mean, they went into Tampa. Tampa looked flat defensively. Maybe it was the hurricane or whatever, but they went into Tampa and made a statement offensively. I think the 49ers did the same exact thing the very next night, but they did it defensively. And I cannot wait for that matchup. That matchup's going to be a lot of fun, Suneil. That Chiefs week, we are going to have a blast. This defense versus that offense, I cannot wait to see what happens, because both of those teams, in my opinion, laid claim, say, hey, we're not done just yet, right? We got more in us. We both believe that we're Super Bowl teams, going about it completely different ways, but that offense definitely lit up the scoreboard and showed everybody who they are with Patrick Mahomes. And the 49ers defense, this is the best defense in the league, and I don't think it's close right now. I really don't.
So, I'm optimistic, Suneil, but there are some things in this game that broke our way that I think aren't being talked about enough. And one thing
let's talk about them.
Yeah, let's talk about it, right? So special teams is some place where we wanted to get a lot better, right? And we have been when it comes to covering punts. The gunners on this team are elite. The way that they're able to go down the ball, get the opposing offenses starting in poor field position is better than it was last season. However, Ray McCloud fumbled the ball. Fortunately, the 49ers were able to recover it. There was a missed field goal in this game. We've had a field goal block that scored a touchdown in a previous game. Special teams isn't fixed. And we've been able to maybe get away with the errors on special teams because of the way that the game had gone. But when you play that is gonna catch up to you eventually, right? If that doesn't get cleaned up. This game was a lot closer till the return, the interception return. It still was a close game. And what has happened in close games with the 49ers? They tend to lose those close games, right? The offense still wasn't able to put a touchdown into the second half of the game. Luckily, they were able to get those points from the defensive side. Now, obviously, the things happened and they did win the game. But Jesse, we know what trends lead to success and what trends are more one-offs than actual trends, right? We're not going to be able to a defense, even as good as this defense is, that hasn't necessarily been one to intercept the ball consistently. Right now, they're averaging one per game, but they're not a defense that's known for scoring or a lot of returns, a lot of interceptions. So to expect that that's going to be a trend moving forward, I would like to say that we could guarantee that, but we can't. Ray McCloud isn't secure with the ball quite yet. That could catch up with us eventually. Like I said, the offense still hasn't been able to put together 4 consistent quarters of offense and moving the ball and scoring in every single quarter. So there's some question marks on this team that we've been able to, I guess, mask with great defensive play. But until those are fixed, Jesse, I'm not going to look here and say that this team is like the best team in the league right now. Because to me, until I see those questions answered, these are reasons why we've lost in the past, and there's still issues that we have right now.
Case 49 says, by the way, I like the photo there. That's one I made. I appreciate that. Case 49 says, Suneil keeping it real, which brings me to my next point. So Real Sports Talk is the name of his channel. Very fitting with this comment. I did put the link in the chat. Go show him some love. Again, he gives us time every Tuesday, so go show him love. But I hear what you're saying, Suneil. I really do. This special teams is not a liability like it was. It may not be, at least not yet, as good as it can be or as good as we'd hoped. But I don't think it's a detriment to this team the way that it was. For
Jesse, if they lost if that turned into a fumble, what would the game be looking like if the Rams were down 8 with the ball in 49ers territory.
Yeah, I mean, the Rams probably would have kicked a field goal like they did all freaking game because the defense is so good. I don't know.
No, but I'm saying like
I
it
feel
could
you.
have changed the trajectory of the game, right?
It could have, but on the flip side of that is, I talked about Jimmy Garoppolo early on, right? And I said I do expect him to have less turnovers because I feel like he's a game manager style quarterback, right? If you're only going to get me 22 passing touchdowns, then only give me 7 turnovers, right? I can't have 22 and then 18. Same thing with when I look at Ray, though. Yes, he had the fumble, but he's also a guy that is getting you a lot of extra yards in the return game, right? So it's kind of that boom or bust. Mm-hmm. He's giving you the boom, but he might bust on you. So pause, big pause. Holy
right.
shit. Wow. Anyways, but he might be a bust as well. That was a big pause. Right. So he's this a boom or bust player.
Monetized anymore.
Yeah, we just lost monetization. So thank you to everybody that went ahead and donated. So he's just that type of player, just like a quarterback would be that may get you the 40-yard touchdown pass, but also might throw a pick here or there that you don't want them to. So right. I don't know. I just, one thing I can say for certain is this special teams is not near as bad as it was last year. It is improved. Is it perfect? No, but it is improved. This team is not perfect. I understand what you're saying. It's really hard for a 2-2 team to say that they put anybody on notice. I think this defense is so elite, and there's enough respect for Kyle Shanahan and the talent on offense, regardless of how many points that they're putting up, to say, man, if this defense can hold us to under 14 points a game, are we sure that our defense is good enough to keep that many talented players to under 14 points a game on the opposite side week in and week out? I don't know if anybody's too confident in that. So heavily disagree. Big pause. Gosh, that's one right there. That clip. Yeah, time will tell. Future Second Sports. But that clip of what I just said, I expected on Twitter.
Right, Fernando, do your work, Fernando.
You know what to do with that one. You know what to do with that one. Did I get to the last one? Did I even read it?
Nah,
I don't know.
Not this.
Milf Hunter, 49ers missing 7 starters right now. Trent. Well, Trey's not coming back, unfortunately. Mitchell, Kinlaw, Armstead, Aziz, Ward. Greenlaw is playing out of his mind after signing the second contract. You're right, and there's a lot of talent that is still not playing. Striptease Trey says, if the Niners drafted A-Rod instead of Smith, how many rings do you think they have? It's so impossible to say because I don't know if they had the coaches to develop Rodgers the way that he was developed in Green Bay. And then the flip side of that is, how many other drafts change because let's say he's good and you win more games, but you're still not winning enough games to be in the playoffs, but you're kind of pushed to the middle of the draft. How do those future drafts change, man? I don't know. I would say this. I would expect that they would have one, but I don't know if the Aaron Rodgers you see today would ever have come to fruition in San Francisco. It was a bad situation here for a long time. So let's see. Did I miss anything else other than comments making fun of that big pause that we had? Doesn't look that way. All right. Listen, we just went for an hour strong. There's still 217 of you in here. I'm going to do it one more time. Drop in the link to Suneil's channel. Go show him some love. He just broke over 1,000. That is a big milestone for a creator. Congratulations to you, Suneil. As always, thank you so much for coming on every Tuesday and helping create great content on this channel. Appreciate all of you in the chat. I will be back tomorrow going behind enemy lines with a Panthers content creator. So don't miss out on that. Until then, peace.